This is the moderator. We have all dental assisting council members in attendance, as well as our legal counsel and board staff. Everyone is connected successfully, and we're ready to begin. When you give me the go-ahead, I will begin the recording.
Thank you, moderator. You may begin.
This meeting is being recorded.
The floor is yours.
This is Karen Fisher, Executive Officer of the Dental Board. I'm going to ask Ms. Rosalina Olagi, current Vice Chair of the Dental Assisting Council, to open the meeting.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us for the Dental Assisting Council meeting. My name is Rosalinda Olagi, and I am the Vice Chair of the Dental Assisting Council. Today is Thursday, February 25th, 2021. This Dental Assisting Council meeting will be held via WebEx. Pursuant to our provisions of Governor Newsom's Executive Order N2520, dated March 12, 2020, neither a public location nor teleconference locations are provided for this meeting. For all those who wish to participate, please log in to the WebEx website provided on the posted agenda for this meeting. Instructions to connect to the meeting are provided on the agenda. The preferred audio connection is via telephone conference and not microphone and speakers on your computer. The phone number and access code will be provided as part of your connection to the meeting. Since this meeting is being conducted via WebEx, I will ask all Dental Assisting Council members and speakers to announce themselves by name before speaking for clarity of official record. All Dental Assisting Council members are able to unmute themselves to speak during the meeting. Please place yourself back on mute when not speaking to reduce background noise for all participants. When making a motion, please use the raise hand feature located on the bottom right of the WebEx screen so board staff can identify a motion and a second. Following such online meeting etiquette will ensure the best audio quality for everyone. During each call for comments from the Dental Assisting Council members and speakers, we will ensure all comments can be accommodated and are heard before proceeding with the agenda. We will be taking a 15-minute break in the morning. We do not anticipate this meeting going past noon. In the event it does, we'll be taking a 30-minute lunch break if necessary. This is an official meeting for the Dental Assisting Council. The Council welcomes public comments on any item on the agenda, and it is the Council's intent to ask public comments prior to the Council taking action on agenda items. The DCA moderator will explain the process for providing public comments shortly. When called upon, the moderator will unmute the microphone of the individual, and they will have 2 minutes to make public comment. The moderator will audibly announce when 30 seconds remain to conclude public comment. After 2 minutes have lapsed, the individual will be placed back on mute. Only one public comment per agenda item is allowed per attendee. Depending on the number of people who would like to testify in a particular agenda item, a total time limit may be imposed. We will ask speakers to please stay on topic and not repeat testimony already provided. If you agree with testimony already provided, please just state your name and that you're in support of any comments previously provided. I would like to ask the DCA moderator to please explain how public comments will be taken during the WebEx meeting.
Thank you. This is the moderator. To facilitate public comment, we will be utilizing the WebEx question and answer feature. When the Council reaches a point in the agenda at which public comment is appropriate, the question and answer feature will be turned on, and members of the public can indicate they would like to make a comment by inserting the phrase, "I would like to make a comment," into the question box, which is typically in the lower right of your screen. To access this box, you will be looking for the icon of a question mark inside a square with the QA next to it on your screen. I will then call on the individual and unmute their microphone. Each individual will have 2 minutes to make their comments. At the conclusion of the 2 minutes, the individual's microphone will be muted, and we will move on to the next member of the public who has a comment. Please note that the question and answer feature is being used only as a means for the members of the public to represent that they would like to make a verbal comment. This is not a means to ask questions of the moderator or members of the council. using this feature will not be answered. When making your comment, please make sure the comment is directed at the host in the dropdown. While you are free to express criticism or negative views, for the sake of the members of the public participating on the call, please do not use profane language when making public comments to the council. I will provide a brief reminder of this approach at the start of each public comment item. And finally, when council members or senior staff are not speaking, I would like to remind them to mute their microphone. If I detect background noise during the meeting as a result of unmuted microphones, I will interject with a brief friendly reminder. Thank you, and I will turn the floor back over to the Vice Chair.
I would like to call the meeting to order and ask for board staff to call the roll.
This is Pahua Tao, the board's administrative analyst, and I will now call the roll. Cazares,
Present.
Cazares present. Fowler,
Fowler, present.
Fowler present. Jawad,
Present.
Jawad present. Miyazaki,
Miyazaki present.
Miyazaki present. Olagi present. Pacheco,
Pacheco present.
Pacheco present. Reed Espinoza,
Reed Espinoza, present.
Reed Espinoza present. A quorum has been established.
Thank you. Now we will move on to agenda item 2, election of council chair and vice chair. I will ask Karen Fisher, executive officer, to present this agenda item.
Thank you, Vice Chair. This is Karen Fisher, Executive Officer of the Dental Board. And at this time, I'm opening nominations for the position of Chair of the Dental Assisting Council. Please use the raise hand feature if there is a nomination for this position. I see the hand raised of Member Olagi. Please unmute your microphone.
Jerry Fowler for vice chair.
Thank you, Ms. Olagi. Ms. Fowler, oh, I'm sorry, we are taking, actually, we are taking nominations for the chair.
Oh, my apologies, executive officer Karen Fisher. For chair, it'll be, my nomination is Melinda Contreras.
Thank you. I hear that there's a nomination for Melinda Casares for chair of the Dental Assisting Council. Ms. Casares, do you accept the nomination?
This is Casares. I accept.
Thank you. At this time, I'll ask if there are any additional nominations for the chair of the Dental Assisting Council. Please use the raise hand feature. Seeing none, I will close the nominations for the chair and ask Pahua to call the roll.
This is Pahua, and I will now call for the roll for Melinda Cazares as the chair. Cazares,
This is Melinda Casares present as chair.
okay, Cazares, aye. Fowler,
Fowler, aye.
Fowler, aye. Jawad,
Jawad, aye.
Jawad, aye. Miyazaki,
Miyazaki, aye.
Miyazaki, aye. Olagi,
Olagi, aye.
Olagi, aye. Pacheco,
Pacheco, aye.
Pacheco, aye. Reed Espinoza,
Reed Espinoza, aye.
Reed Espinoza, aye. And the vote passed.
Thank you, Ms. Tao. Congratulations, Ms. Cazares. We will now open the nominations for the position of Vice Chair of the Dental Assisting Council. Please raise please use the raise hand feature if you would like to nominate somebody for this position. Ms. Casares, I see your hand is raised. Go ahead.
Ms. Casares, I would like to nominate Jerry Fowler for vice chair.
Thank you, Ms. Casares. You can lower your hand now. Ms. Fowler, you've been nominated for the position of vice chair. Do you accept the nomination?
This is Fowler. I accept.
Thank you. I will ask if there are any additional nominations for vice chair. If so, please use the raise hand feature. Seeing none, the nominations for vice chair are now closed. Ms. Tao, would you please call the roll?
This is the roll for Jerry Fowler, Ms. Jerry Fowler as Vice Chair. Casares.
This is Casares, aye.
Casares, aye. Fowler.
Fowler, I.
Fowler, aye. Jawad.
Jawad, I.
Jawad, aye. Miyazaki.
Miyazaki, I.
Miyazaki, aye. Olagi.
Olagi, aye.
Olagi, aye. Pacheco.
Pacheco, I.
Pacheco, aye. Reed Espinoza.
Reed Espinoza, I.
Reed Espinoza, aye. And the vote passed.
Thank you, Ms. Tao. So the new chair and vice chair of the Dental Assisting Council for the year of 2021 are Melinda Casares and Ms. Jerry Fowler. You will serve in this position until the end of the year when we'll hold elections again. Now that the chair is elected for the Dental Assisting Council, I'm going to ask Ms. Casares to take over the responsibility of facilitating the rest of the meeting.
Thank you. This is Casares, thank you. Now we will move on to agenda item 11. Presentation regarding written examination. Well, I'm sorry. Let me correct myself.
Okay.
We will move on to agenda 3 on public comment items that are not on the agenda.
That's correct.
This is the moderator. We have opened the Q&A panel. If you'd like to make a public comment, please click on the Q&A icon on your screen. Type, I would like to make a comment into the text field and submit that. We will pause for just a brief moment to allow time for submission of comments. And as a reminder, comments will be limited to 2 minutes with a 30-second reminder. Seeing no requests for comment, would you like me to close the Q&A panel?
Thank you, moderator. Yes.
You're welcome.
This is Casares. Thank you. At this time, we will be taking agenda items out of order to accommodate our presenters. Our presenter schedule for agenda items 10 through 11. Let's move on to item 10, presentation regarding examination, development, and validation process for the Department of Consumer Affairs Office of Professional Examination Services. I'm going to ask Dr. Tracy Montes, Dr. Heidi Linser, and Ms. Amy Gandy, OPES representatives, to present this agenda item.
Good morning. Good morning. This is Heidi Linser. Can you hear me?
Yes, we
We
can.
can hear you.
Okay.
We can hear you, Heidi.
Hi, this is Heidi Linzer. I'm the Chief of the Office of Professional Examination Services. And Tracy Montez, who is our Division of Programs and Policy Review Chief, is also here. And Amy Montez is, and Amy Welsh-Gandy, sorry, is not joining us this morning. So I will go ahead with the presentation. We can move on to the next slide. Okay, so OPES works with 23 of DCA's boards, bureaus, and committees to develop their state-specific examinations or to review their national examinations. For many of our clients, we perform both of these services. So we offer professional consulting services and we provide recommendations based on regulations, professional guidelines, and technical standards related to licensure examinations for the majority of DCA's boards, bureaus, and committees. We've been working with the dental board for the last several years to review and update all of the board's examination programs. And we really appreciate the opportunity to speak to you today to explain our processes and answer your questions. Go ahead on to the next slide. So these are the regulations, standards, and guidelines that we follow for our work. Most importantly, Business and Professions Code 139 requires that boards conduct an occupational analysis for each of their examinations every 5 to 7 years, and that boards submit a report every year indicating the status of occupational analysis and examination development. BMP 139 also required OPES to develop an examination validation policy for DCA licensing programs. So these other standards listed here, the principles and the standards, they require that evidence of validity based on test content requires a thorough and explicit definition of the content domain of interest. And I'm going to talk more about that in my presentation. In addition, a close link between test content and job content should be demonstrated. So what it's really saying is that if you're going to test people in a licensure examination, you need to make sure that what you're testing on is job related, that we don't test on things that are not necessary for safe and competent practice. And the way we meet those standards is by conducting an occupational analysis. And we're going to talk about that process in more detail. And another most important idea from our standards and guidelines is that actively practicing licensees serving as subject matter experts, or SMEs as we call them, they must be included in every step of the process. That's how we ensure the job relatedness, is we make sure that we have practicing RDAs for your program to assist us with our work. Okay, next slide. So taking a look at the big picture, the purpose of licensing is to identify those practitioners who can practice safely and competently from those who cannot. So as you see in this graphic, the goal is to distinguish the green people from the yellow people. And this is our overall mission, protecting the public from unsafe practitioners. So licensure examinations must be developed to provide a valid and reliable method for doing this. And to be fair, when we're making decisions about who's legally allowed to practice, we must focus on entry-level tasks and knowledge important for public protection. When we develop examinations at OPES, we need to ensure that the examinations protect consumers while not limiting access to occupations. So it's that balance between the two goals. And we find that balance by developing examinations that are fair and valid, and by using subject matter experts throughout the process. Okay, next slide. So what is a standardized examination? Part of the process to ensure a fair and valid examination is to ensure standardization. Candidates qualify for the examination through different pathways. They take courses at different institutions, they receive training in a variety of settings, and they pass tests that vary in quality and difficulty. So for the state of California to certify that they're qualified to be licensed, they must demonstrate that they have the required knowledge to practice safely and competently. And they must all take the same examination under the same conditions. Candidates who fail the examination are typically given a score breakdown, but the examination is not designed as a teaching tool. And yes, your RDA candidates are given a breakdown of in the content areas that they missed. They're given the percentage they got correct in each content area so they know where they need to study more. Next slide. So to determine the entry-level tasks and knowledge that are critical for public protection, we conduct an occupational analysis. And for the RDA program, we conducted the OA in 2016. The occupational analysis defines practice in terms of the most important tasks that new licensees must be able to perform safely and competently, and the essential knowledge required for safe and effective practice. The occupational analysis is a first step in what we call the cycle of examination development. The results of the occupational analysis are a detailed description of practice and an outline for developing the licensure examination. So the examination flows directly from the occupational analysis, which reached out to practicing RDAs, asking them, what do you do in your job and what knowledge is necessary for your job? And this is the legal defensibility for the examination to show that we collected data from practicing RDAs, and then that data fed our description of practice, which then determined the examination outline of what we're testing. From that, once we have the examination outline, we have RDAs come in to assist us with writing test questions, reviewing test questions, and constructing examinations. And we also work with them to determine the passing score for the examination to make sure we set it at the proper level. Next slide. Occupational analyses should be performed every 5 to 7 years. So we did the RDA in 2016, so we will be doing it again very soon. Occupational analyses capture significant changes over in a profession, and testing standards and guidelines require that they be performed at regular intervals to ensure that examinations stay current with changes in the profession. Next slide. So in addition to providing a detailed description of practice and providing the foundation for the examination, the occupational analysis also provides qualitative and quantitative data that is useful for other purposes. Once we have the detailed description of practice, it can be used to evaluate licensure requirements to ensure they're congruent with the entry-level competencies. We can also look at training and curriculum requirements. The OA process also improves transparency by providing specific examination information that candidates need to know in order to be licensed. Slide. These are the basic steps of the OA process. And the process requires involvement, as I said, of SMEs with diverse practice backgrounds, specifically diverse work settings, practice types, and geographic regions. The SMEs review draft task and knowledge statements. They develop the content areas and identify demographic variables that may be important when we analyze the data. Another group of SMEs reviews the survey results and determines the final examination outline, which specifies the weights assigned to the different content areas. We make sure that areas of practice that are done more frequently or are rated more important get more weight on the examination. Next slide. So this slide is talking how we incorporate value, ethics, and integrity. And it mostly comes through the subject matter experts. We make sure that they reflect the profession, as we said, in specialty type of practice. They're critical to the process. We want SMEs who add value to the process, but we need to be mindful of ethics and conflict of interest. OPS policy does not allow the participation of individuals who could have undue influence or who could be perceived as having a conflict of interest. So we wouldn't allow board members, committee members, and instructors to serve as subject matter experts. We do allow instructors to participate in the occupational analysis process. They are important stakeholders because they have lots of knowledge of the profession and they're working with the entry-level practitioners. as the occupational analysis is a description of practice, we welcome the participation of instructors in that process. However, not in the process of writing and reviewing and developing the examination. Next slide. So this slide just depicts the roles of the critical participants in the examination development process. The SMEs are selected to provide information representing all areas of current practice with a focus on entry-level practice, which we define as being licensed 5 years or less. We like to have the participation of those newly licensed people because they're in touch with entry level, but we also use subject matter experts who've been practicing for many years because of their experience and expertise. And the board provides and is an important partner in that the board ensures the recruitment of a sufficient number of representative SMEs. And then OPES facilitates the process and ensures the psychometric standards are met. Next slide. These are some of the strategies that we use to train our subject matter experts. We want to make sure that we're using current job-related topics. They review the examination outline. We explain to them levels of cognitive processing, which is shown in this graphic here, that we want to try to write items at this higher level of application and analysis, less items on do you understand the meaning of a term or can you recall. Some of the information is recall because it is the examination involves laws, and so some of those are just recall questions. However, we do, because we have an examination that is law and practice, for the practice-related questions we're working on the application and analysis of information. And those questions tend to perform better, so since the development of the RDA combined examination, we've been increasing the number of those type of questions in our item bank. Next slide. And this is another one of our goals is minimizing language barriers for English learners. We know that a lot of the people who take the RDA exam are English learners. So these are some of the strategies that we use with the subject matter experts and with our editors at OPES. We ensure that items are clearly written, that they don't have extraneous language. They use language that is used in practice, the same terms that they should have been learning in school or on the job. We avoid idioms, jargon, and acronyms. If we use an acronym, we are spelling it out. We also encourage candidates who take the test to provide comments during the test-taking process. They have a way to write a comment on any question that they think is a problem. We review those comments on a regular basis to see if there's any issues with the items. And we also conduct statistical analysis on the test items regarding how they're performing. We can identify questions that are too easy, questions that are too hard. And so we do that on a regular basis. If there's a problem with a question, then we would bring it to a workshop with subject matter experts and have them review it to tell us if they can determine what the problem is with the question. And as I said, candidates who fail the exam do receive a breakdown of the percentage of the items that they missed in each content area. Next slide. Of the services that OPES provides to the Dental Board of California. We do occupational analysis for all the board's licensing examination programs. We've done all of them except sedation permit. I think we're right now, as you may know, we're working on the orthodontist assistant program, and we're going to talk about that in the next meeting. We review all of the dentist national examinations. We also do examination development for the dentist, law and ethics, the RDA, the RDA-EF, then the orthodontist assistant examinations. We do statistical analysis to assess item and examination performance for all of these examinations. And we're also assisting the board right now with recruitment of SMEs. And we work together. The board provides us a list of eligible SMEs, and we contact them and schedule them for workshops. I think that's all I have for this agenda item. I have my question slide after the next two, which are part of the next agenda item, but I'll pause here to take any questions.
Miyazaki, I have a question. Is that okay for me to ask it now?
Yes.
Let's see. I just wanted to find out, how does this, well, thank you again for this presentation. It was really helpful. And I was looking at the OPES analysis last night, and it was very thorough. So I just wanted to thank you for that. And I have a couple of questions, but one of my questions is about how the educators are kind of involved in the loop of how this happens, because the subject matter experts, are they sometimes educators or can be educators, or they're not allowed to be subject matter experts?
So educators are allowed to be subject matter experts during the occupational analysis process. And that's when we're developing a description of practice of what RDAs do. So we do include educators in that process, but not in the item writing, item review, and examination construction process.
Okay, thank you. I have another question. So I just wanted to ask about I think that there's a pool of questions, right? And then how is that a random selection for the questions for how they're chosen? Because I know for the DAMBY exam, the CDA exam, it depends on the way that the candidate answers the questions, that they kind of pick the questions for that candidate. Is that the same for the RDA exam, or is that just like a random selection?
It's a fixed examination. It's not what you're talking about. Sounds like an adaptive examination. So our process is not that same process. There's a fixed examination form. There are multiple forms, but they are fixed forms. The examination doesn't change based on the candidate's answer.
Okay, thank you. I have more questions, but if anyone else wants to ask questions, I'll let them ask theirs.
Hi, this is Tracy. Can I jump in real quick? Just to elaborate a bit more on that, the examination plan is sort of the blueprint. So questions are selected based upon the content areas, and forms are created. And then various forms are used to ensure that we don't overexpose the items, but all candidates see the same set or form of items. Thank you.
So this is Miyazaki again. So I'm sorry, I just have a bunch of questions. How does with COVID and the changes in infection control with the N95s and the aerosols, how will that affect the exam for the candidates that are going to be taking it from now into the future?
Well, the exam is based on the infection control guidelines. And when we have subject matter experts come in, they alert us to any changes that have happened in the field. So if there are changes because of COVID, those should be brought to our attention by the subject matter experts.
Thank you.
Are you talking about sorry, this is Tracy again. Are you talking about the content of the exam or the administration of the exam in COVID, or both?
I was talking more about the, like, let's say, for example, masks. So there's masks, and N95 is considered a respirator. So if there's questions about masks or respirators, like, does that, will that become confusing to like the candidates if they we're taught that the N95 is a respirator versus like a mask, that kind of verbiage.
Okay, so the content. So yes, that will be captured by the process. We review the items. So that's why Heidi showed you that slide that was cyclic. So as these forms are created and items are selected from the pool, subject matter experts will be reviewing them and making determinations as to whether or not an item may now become confusing because protocols have changed. Then the item may be revised or it may be put back into the pool for another time. But yes, that's why, again, this process, it's so important to have the subject matter experts always look at the test items before they go into a form. And then also, as Heidi mentioned, as the exam is being administered, if there are statistics that indicate that there's some confusion among the candidates, that item would get reviewed. And if we were to see a pattern such as that, then we potentially could pull that item from being scored. So again, balancing assessment of competency with fairness to candidates. Hopefully that helps.
Thank you. That's really helpful. And then I guess my last, I don't know if it's a question or not, but I'm looking at the list of references for the RDA General and Law and Ethics written exam. And for example, like the medical emergencies, there's that is the 2002 edition, and then the other emergency book is a 2012. And there's several other books that are in 2002, like Safety Standards, Infection Control for Dental Assistants. That seems like it might be kind of dated. And then the 2005 Materials and Procedures for Today's Dental Assistant. Do the subject matter experts, do they refer to those references when they're asked to review the exam questions? And is there a possibility that the references can be is it possible to the references to be updated to a more current version?
Yes. During the occupational analysis process, every 5 to 7 years, that's when we typically review the reference list and determine if it needs updating. And so as it's been 5 years coming in 2021 since we did the occupational analysis for RDA, so that we will be looking at that very soon when we update the occupational analysis, and we'll ask the subject matter experts about updating the references.
Thank you. This is Miyazaki. That was my last question. Thank you.
I have a statement too. This is Jerry Fowler.
This is the moderator. Tracy Reed Espinoza as well has her hands up.
This is Karen Fisher, the executive officer. I'm going to ask the chair, can you see the hands raised on your screen?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
So when a hand is raised, you can go ahead and call on the person to go ahead and speak and ask them to put their hand down after they're speaking. Okay?
Thank you.
And this is the moderator. Chair Casares, if I could just ask, when you're not speaking, if you could mute your microphone, we're getting quite a bit of feedback on your end.
Thank you, moderator. Terry Reed or Tracy Reed, did you have any questions or comments?
Yes, thank you. I was wondering how we're going to move forward with doing testing under the COVID situation and the 6 feet apart and all of our health concerns. Do we have any kind of plans for doing the written exams?
Yes, we are administering the written exams. Our administration vendor is PSI, and they have taken all the precautions required to administer exams during COVID. So they have partitions and space between the computers that candidates use to take the test. and everyone's required to wear masks, and physical distancing is practiced as much as possible in the test center. And so they have been administering the test throughout most of the pandemic.
And moving forward, the PSI is going to continue to do the testing in the every 3 month situation for RDA, EF2s, et cetera, as we know right now.
The written test, are you talking about the practical exam?
If you have any information on the practical, that would be great as well. But yes, on the written.
No, yes, they're continuing to give the written as well for the RDA-EF.
Thank you.
Heidi, this is Tracy. Can you confirm the RDA written is given continuous, correct? It's yes. So each day candidates are testing, and they have essentially been testing since April of 2020.
This is Sarah Wallace. I'm the Assistant Executive Officer of the board. I just wanted to confirm what Tracy mentioned. We have been administering all of the written exams for the RDA licensure categories since April of 2020. There was just a slight delay, but it's been in a continuous administration, and we have not been made aware as staff of any issues relating to candidates being unable to take the written exam.
Thank you.
This is Chair Casares. Jerry Fowler, did you have any questions or comments?
Yes. I wanted to make a comment regarding the orthodontic assisting permit examination. You mentioned that that is under review because the pass rate, obviously, of all the exams compared to RDA, RDA-EF is much lower on the OAP. And I believe, personally, I think it's due to the diverse armamentaria that the OAP gets tested on. And so they have to utilize a lot more critical thinking with that examination, because in a private practice, a dentist has specific armamentaria that they use, and so they're very familiar with that. But on the test, they're asking you, and they're required to know much more diverse background on armamentaria and supplies, and to be able to critically think when it's utilized in a question, why that is specifically used. And so I think that is contributing to the low pass rate on the OAP exam. But I just wanted to make that statement. I know when you're putting together these questions, however that's done, they might be I don't know if it's via dentist or experts in that field, but they're utilizing armamentaria that they use in practice in the questions. But the person taking the test may not possibly be familiar with it. But I just thought I'd throw that out there for consideration.
I appreciate those comments, and that's why we're in the process of doing the occupational analysis for the orthodontic assistant to clarify the tasks and knowledge that are needed to practice in that profession. And it hasn't been done for a long time. So we will make sure that through that occupational analysis process that we are testing on the actual job-related tasks and knowledge for those orthodontic assistant practitioners.
Thank you for your comments. Next, this is Chair Casares. Melody Randolph, I'm sorry. Do you have any questions or comments?
Pardon me, Chair, this is Karen Fisher. So if there are no additional council member comments, then the next step is to ask for public comments and then ask the DC moderator to facilitate the lines for the comments. And DC moderator, if you'll remind the attendees that they do not use the raise hand feature, that'd be great. So Chair, why don't you go on and ask for public comments?
Thank you. This is Chair Casares. Are there any public comments?
This is the moderator. We have opened the Q&A panel for requests for public comment. If you'd like to make a comment, please click on the Q&A icon that appears on your screen. Type "I would like to make a comment" into the text field and submit that to all panelists. And as a reminder, the raised hand feature is to be used by our committee members or council members, as it may be, only, not for public comment. And our first request for comment comes from Melody Randolph. Melody, your line is open and you will have 2 minutes.
Hi there. I just have two questions. One being, I understand that you do the occupational analysis every 5 to 7 years. So does that mean that the test questions are therefore only changed every 5 to 7 years? And I'm asking based on Kara's previous comment about COVID and how it affects the exam. You know, waiting, a long period of time, 5 to 7 years before changes are made to the exam seems to be way too long. So what's the cycle process for changing exam questions?
So yes, the occupational analysis is every 5 to 7 years. However, the examination development is ongoing. So we have ongoing workshops with subject matter experts to write and review questions and to construct the examination. So that process, it does not wait 5 to 7 years. We do that ongoing.
And seeing no additional requests for comment, would you like me to close the Q&A panel?
Thank you, moderator. I believe the chair would like you to close the panel.
Actually, Melody Randolph says she has another question. Are we taking multiple questions in this?
Actually, no, we are not.
Okay,
this is an opportunity for public comment. So it is not the opportunity to ask any questions. So Ms. Randolph, if you would like to put your question into more of a statement, that'd be great.
All right, and we have one. Nope, it looks like that's it for comments. I will close the Q&A panel.
Thank you, Dr. Montes and Dr. Linser. Now we will move on to the remaining items in order. Agenda item number 4, update on dental assisting programs and courses. I'm going to ask Amelia, dental assisting program manager, to present this agenda item.
I'm sorry, Chair. This is Sarah Wallace, Assistant Executive Officer. I believe we still have agenda item 11, presentation from OPES relating to the RDA written exam pass rate.
This is Chair Casares. I'm sorry that we were done with the agenda item 11. Sure, you are correct. Thank you for that correction.
So I believe we're going to ask Dr. Montes and Dr. Linser to go ahead and continue this agenda item. Thank you.
This is Dr. Linser. If you can go back to the slide presentation from agenda item 10, the last 3 slides are related to agenda item 11. Next. 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 maybe they separated them. There should be 2 more slides. There we go. Thank you. Great. So for the RDA examination program, the board asked OPS to review all of the examinations in 2016 and 2017. And at that time, there were 3 RDA examinations. There was a general written examination, there was a law and ethics examination, and there was a practical examination. And in 2017, OPS recommended that the board discontinue the practical examination and combine the general and law and ethics examinations into one combined examination. And that was first administered in May of 2018. So as a special project, the board asked OPS to evaluate written examination passing rates before and after the change from the 2 separate examinations to the 1 combined examination. And the board was also interested to see if there were different passing rates by qualification method. As you know, candidates can qualify by an on-the-job pathway or an education pathway. So the memo of the results of our analysis, the memo is in your packet, and it's very detailed, but I've highlighted the main results here in this slide. So we can see in this slide that regardless of qualification method, overall, more candidates pass the combined examination. The difference is small, but statistically significant. So meaning the difference is greater than chance. So we found that if you look at the overall pass rate for all was for the 2 examinations, the bottom of the slide, the 66.63%, compared to the combined, we had a 68.52%. Now remember, this was data between 2017 and 2020. So it isn't the most recent data, but it's the last data that we analyzed. And this was candidates who passed both written and law and ethics examinations or the combined examination after any number of attempts. And the next slide. The next slide, the second result that I wanted to call your attention to is this is the results of the analysis of the 2 qualification pathways. So this table shows that for either of the 2 examination configurations, whether they took the RDA combined or the RDA written and the RDA law and ethics, candidates who qualified by the education pathway passed at significantly higher rates. So in summary, based on the time frame data that we analyzed, in all cases, education candidates passed the examination at greater rates. And I'll take any questions you have about this.
This is Chair Casares. Are there any questions from council members? Please raise your hand. This is Chair Casares. Kara, do you have any questions or comments?
Yes, thank you again for that information. It's it's really important for us to see that, and I'm wondering if it's possible to. I know that in the previous presentation there was discussion about looking at the exam questions and the content and the comprehension. Is it possible to find out if how many of the candidates that are taking the exam, if English is their second language, and to sort of determine and see if that has any sort of linkage to the pass rates?
I will ask Sarah that. OPS does not have information on that. Ask Sarah if that is.
Hi, this is Sarah. No, we do not have information on that linkage.
Would it be possible to add that question to the RDA, or I mean, even to the other exams too as well? To because looking at when I look at the demographics for California and some of the other states, that there's a larger majority of immigrants that come to California, Texas. I think Florida is another one. Is that something that can be looked at or not?
You're asking for a question to be added to the examination, asking for that information?
Or even could it be linked to their application where, well, if they would just find out somehow if English is their primary language, or is there, if English is their second language, and what is their primary language?
Staff will take that question back, and we'll have to follow up on that.
Thank you.
And if I may, this is Tracy Montez. We do get questions related to certain demographics frequently in our presentations, and there is a government code that prevents boards from collecting demographic information unless there is a very specific purpose, and we defer that often to our legal counsel. We have to be extremely sensitive that there isn't a perception that that information could somehow be used in a licensing or enforcement decision-making process. So that's why that government code is there. So as Sarah said, it would require further investigation, and certainly something that OPS does not do. Again, we defer to our boards on that type of decision and data collection.
Thank you. Kara, did you have another question or comment?
I did. Since OPS does the exams, looks at the exams and helps write the exam for the consumer affairs, how did the different languages happen for the Board of Cosmetology? Because they have theirs in, like, I think 3 or 4 different languages. Was that a decision that was made by their board, and it was not something that OPS was involved with?
Heidi, do you want me to take that? I'll jump in and you can expand. So the candidate population has to have a certain representation, or there's a certain percentage. And if there is that need to have a exam translated because of the percentage of their candidate population, they will explore that. It's an extremely costly and technical process. If you think about your exams, for example, as Heidi has described it, it's not one exam you're translating, it's a bank of test questions. We actually don't refer to translation, we use the term adaptation, because you can never truly translate a word in the most perfect sense. And so we adapt the process of the questions into various languages. Barber and cosmetology are able to do that, again, because they have such a large candidate population that is Hispanic, for example. That's one of the languages that the exams are adapted to, and they do that. We do have inquiries often to translate other exams. Our acupuncture exam is also translated in a couple of other exams. OPS is consulted. We try to give some guidance because of the technical needs and costs associated. Thank you. Heidi, if you have anything else to add?
Yeah, that would be initiate that process to discuss with OPES.
Thank you. That was, now I understand the process much better.
This is Chair Casares. Are there any council member comments? Please raise your hand. This is Chair Casares. Are there any public comments? DCA moderator, please facilitate the lines for public comment.
This is the moderator. We have opened the Q&A panel for requests for public comment. If you'd like to make a comment, please click on the Q&A icon on your screen and submit the comment. I would like to make a comment into the text field. Again, you will have 2 minutes for your question or comment. Our first comment comes from Melody Randolph. Melody, your line is open and you will have 2 minutes.
I would just like to support the thought process of investigating offering the exam in multiple languages. I know from my experience and all of the people that I teach, that would be tremendously helpful, and I would venture to guess that the pass rate would definitely be, of the exam, would definitely be influenced in a positive manner by offering the exam in languages that are the primary language of the candidate and the language that they use in their offices. So just would like to support that investigation and move forward with that. Thank you.
Seeing no additional requests for comment at this time, would you like me to close the Q&A panel?
Yes, moderator, please close the Q&A panel. Thank you.
Thank you. It is closed.
This is Chair Casares. Thank you, Dr. Montes and Dr. Lenser. Now we will move on to address the remaining items in order. Agenda item 4, update on dental assisting programs and courses. I'm going to ask Amelia now, dental assisting program manager, to present this item agenda. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Amelia Zulawaga. I'm the Dental Assisting Program Manager. I hope everyone is well. The update on dental assisting programs and courses begins on page 5 of the meeting materials. Table 1 shows the total program and course applications approved within fiscal years 2018, 2019, 2019, 2020, and 2020 to 2021. Table 2 on this same page shows the total RDA and RDAEF site visits conducted within fiscal years 2018, 2019, 2019 to 2020, and 2020 to 2021. Moving to page 6 of the meeting materials, Table 3 shows the program and course application status within each of those fiscal years. Table 4 on this same page shows the total approved programs and courses as of December 31st, 2020. Lastly, Table 5, which begins on the same page as well, lists by provider name all programs and courses approved in 2020. And I would be happy to answer any questions on this agenda item.
This is Chair Casares. Are there any council member comments? Please use the raise hand feature. Thank you. Are there any public comments? Moderator, please facilitate the lines for public comments. Thank you.
This is the moderator. We have again opened the Q&A panel for submission of requests for public comment. If you'd like to make a public comment, please click on the Q&A icon on your screen. Type, I would like to make a comment into the ask field and submit that. Seeing no requests for comment at this time.
Thank you, moderator. Please close for public comment.
It is closed.
Okay, this is Chair Casares. We will now move on to agenda item 7, update on dental assisting licensing status. Ms. Zulaga, would you please continue with this agenda item?
I'm sorry, Chair. I think we're on agenda item 5.
Thank you for that correction.
Chair, have you found your way on the agenda?
Yes, we're still with agenda item number 5. Ms. Zulaga, would you please continue with this agenda item?
This is the moderator. Amelia, it appears your line is unmuted, but we are unable to hear you at the moment.
Sorry about that. Can you hear me now?
We can hear you now.
Okay. Sorry about that. This agenda item includes an overview of program reevaluation, and this memorandum includes information about board staff beginning the reevaluation process with RDA programs, as well as an overview of how we have begun to and will continue to re-review currently approved programs and courses. Due to the influx of new programs and course applications, there have been no updates to the RDA program reevaluation since the status update provided at the December 4th, 2020 board meeting. And I would be happy to answer any questions on this agenda item.
This is Chair Casares. Are there any questions or comments from the council members? Please use the raise hand feature. Thank you. Moderator, please open. Are there any public comments? Please facilitate the lines for public comments.
This is the moderator. We have opened the Q&A panel. If you'd like to submit a public comment, please click on the Q&A icon on your screen, type "I would like to make a comment" into the ask field, and submit that. Again, public comments will have a limit of 2 minutes, and we will pause for a brief moment. Seeing no requests for comment, would you like me to close the panel?
Yes, please.
It is closed.
Thank you. Now we will move on to agenda item 6, update on dental assisting examination statistics. Amelia, please continue with this agenda item.
Thank you. Currently, the board offers 4 written examinations: the RDA Combined General Written and Law and Ethics exam, the RDA-EF written, the Orthodontic Assistant Permit written, and the Dental Sedation Assistant Permit written exam. The tables beginning on page 1 of the memo and page 12 of the meeting materials includes candidates that have been tested within each of the fiscal years 2018 to 2019, 2019, 2020, and 2020, 2021, and the passing and failing scores for each examination. Additionally, you will find a breakdown of each examination by first-time and repeat candidates and their passing and failing scores within each of those fiscal years. You will also find, following the memo, numerous pages of statistics beginning on page 14 of the meeting materials that show the passing rates for individual approved programs in 2020. and I would be happy to answer any questions on this agenda item.
Thank you, Amelia. Is there any questions or comments from the council members? Please use the raise hand feature. This is Chair Casares. Moderator, please open for public comments. Facilitate the lines. Thank you.
This is the moderator. We have opened the Q&A panel again. If you'd like to submit a request for comment, please click on the Q&A icon on your screen. Type "I would like to make a comment" into the ask field and submit that. We will pause for just a moment. Seeing no requests for comment, would you like me to close the panel?
Yes, thank you, moderator.
It is closed.
Thank you. This is Chair Casares. We will move on to item agenda 11, presentation regarding RDA examination pass rates.
I'm sorry to interrupt again, Chair. I think we're on agenda item 7.
Thank you for that correction again. Agenda item 7, update on dental assisting licensing statistics. Amelia, please proceed.
Thank you. The board currently licenses RDAs, RDAES, OAs, and DSAs in the dental assisting program. This memo, beginning on page 34 of the meeting materials, includes tables that indicate the number of applications received by the board, as well as those that have been approved, the number of licenses that have been issued, along with the number of applications canceled, withdrawn, and denied. Also included is an overview of the current and inactive, delinquent, and canceled licenses. Lastly, this memo provides the delinquent license aging, a breakdown of licensees per county, and the ratio of RDAs to DDSs licensed within those counties. For all of these tables, data is shown for fiscal years 2018, 2019, 2019 to 2020, and 2020 to 2021. And I would be happy to answer any questions on this agenda item.
Are there any questions from our dental assisting council members? Please use the raise hand feature. Thank you. Are there any public comments or questions? Moderator, please facilitate the lines for public comment.
This is the moderator. We have opened the Q&A panel. If you'd like to make a public comment, please click on the Q&A icon on your screen and type "I would like to make a comment" into the text field, and then click send. Seeing no requests for comment, would you like me to close the panel?
Yes, thank you, moderator.
It is closed.
This is Chair Amelia. We will now, excuse me, this is Chair Casares. Thank you, Amelia. Now moving on to agenda item 8, presentation on dental assisting pathway and Smile Crew California by the California Dental Association. I'm going to ask Mr. Anders, Vice President of the Strategic Intelligence and Analytics for the California Dental Association, to present this agenda item. Thank you.
Good morning. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. This is Anders Bjork. I'm a CDA employee, California Dental Association. I'm the Vice President of Strategic Intelligence and Analytics, as was mentioned, and I'm pleased to be with you here today. I'd like to share with you some of the things that CDA is doing to increase the interest in and hopefully supply of dental assistants in California. I think it's helpful to start with a little bit of background as to how we arrived at this spot. Several years back, in response to increasing challenges our members were reporting to us around the recruitment and retention of dental assisting staff, our board of directors directed a task force to investigate the issue and suggest possible solutions. The task force studied a number of things and found there were a variety of factors contributing to the disparity between the supply and demand. Notably, the supply of dental assistants was not keeping pace with the growth of dentists and the demand therein. So a lot of this has to do just with general economic growth over the past decade, and of course, prior to the pandemic. But other professions and other opportunities were growing and were apparently more attractive to employees who might have otherwise considered professions in dental assisting. So this isn't unique to dentistry. We're seeing this across a number of professions, especially at the lower end of the pay scale. And even though this phenomenon is felt fairly broadly around the state, we note that it is particularly strong in densely populated urban areas where it seems that price competition for cost of living, especially housing, is strong. This tends to have the effect of forcing lower paid employees to move out of city center peripheral locations and have to commute to their jobs, which can be difficult to sustain, especially as we know that many of the individuals who work in dental assisting careers are likely to have younger families. So the task force determined that it would be helpful for our member dentists to have some support in helping to prepare non-dental employees for careers for roles in dental practices. Notably, the recommendation was made that CDA should create a basic curriculum that members could use to help orient the onboarding of non-dental staff into early stages of dental assisting. Now, just to be clear, when I'm saying dental assisting, I'm not talking about a licensed dental assistant. I'm talking about somebody who is just beginning to work in a dental office and hopefully will gain enough knowledge and experience to eventually become a DA, an RDA, RDAEF, any part of that chain. So we were working on that curriculum to have available for our members, and the pandemic hit. Of course, there were a lot of job losses, especially among service sector jobs. One of our dentist leaders, Dr. Natasha Lee, whom I'm sure some of you are probably familiar with, was asked to be a participant in Governor Newsom's Economic Recovery Task Force. And through Dr. Lee's work on that task force, we became aware of some programs that the state was working on to help get people back to work, particularly where job losses have been severe. One of those sectors was transportation, particularly the economic activity that occurs related to airports in the state. So these might be airport workers. They might also be ancillary support workers in rental car companies, things, even cafes and restaurants that are near airports that were broadly affected when the pandemic hit. So one of these proposals, and I believe it's attached as an agenda item appendix, was to tap into some money from the federal government that would flow to the state to help some of these displaced transportation workers find new careers. And so we created this proposal that would have tapped into state funding to support that work. Unfortunately, much due to our surprise, that proposal was actually denied by the federal government, and we have resubmitted. Apparently, what we're told is it was is simply a situation of the state hadn't quite spent down enough of the already allocated job disposition support that had been in place. So we are hopeful that it may still be approved, but in the meantime, we're still moving forward. Part of that proposal had been to get a public-private partnership, and we did get private support from Delta Dental of California, who made a contribution to help support this work, as they are particularly concerned about access issues in dentistry around the state as we are. So what we are working on here, and things are very fluid, as I said, when I was originally asked to join this panel, I thought we would be talking about the receipt of the federal grant, but that didn't happen. So we're still moving forward, and what we're trying to create here is a boot camp, which would be a mix of in-person and online training that would cover the basic concepts that would allow an employee displaced from perhaps another vertical in the economy to consider or hopefully start working in a dental office. So the gap that we're trying to bridge here is for any of our member dentists who are looking to hire and support their office through additional staff, but they're a little bit wary about potentially hiring somebody who has absolutely no background in dentistry. So let's think about maybe a barista or something like that who is ready to take a different role. So the concepts that the boot camp would cover are things such as the culture and expectations in a typical dental practice, HIPAA guidelines and policies and how those are applied in the dental practice, infection control and aseptic techniques, modeling the proper use and care of equipment and materials in the practice, basic oral anatomy, dental procedures, dental disease, patient intake processes, foundational procedure setups, understanding of introductory chairside dental assisting techniques, demonstration of effective patient communication, understanding foundational principles of radiation safety and imaging techniques. So regardless of whether or not we're able to tap into the federal funds, we are continuing to build this model out, trying to build partnerships with local workforce development boards around the state. And we're hopeful that part of the funds that Delta has put into this will cover an evaluation of the work that we are doing. And we're hopeful to be able to use that evaluation to show other private funding sources what can be done in order to help generate interest in the profession. And we do hope to attract other local workforce boards through this work as well. So I want to be clear, the goal here is not to build dental assistants probably in the parlance of the language that you're used to, but it is to help bridge the gap between what dentists need in their practices and what employees coming from impacted industries may be lacking. So dentists recognize that they are, especially in dense urban areas, I think, we've seen the ratio of dentists to assistants in the San Francisco Bay Area is 3 dentists for 1 assistant, when in fact, as your board knows, that ratio should be inverted. So dentists working in those markets have already come to the realization that they will need to probably look to other sources for employees. And our hope is to help lessen the burden of making the transition for those employees as they consider profession in dental assisting and dental support roles within the office. So I'll pause there, and I'd be happy to take any questions, as I know I covered a lot of information there.
Thank you for your presentation. Are there any comments for the council members? Please use your raise hand feature. Michelle, I believe you had a question or comment first.
Yes, good afternoon or morning. My name is Michelle Jawad, new member. I did have some questions and maybe a couple comments. As a past dental assistant instructor and currently an employee at UCSF School of Dentistry, I realize that there is an extreme shortage of dental assistants, in part to the closure of schools within our local area here in the Bay Area. My question is, because I've seen a lot of other colleges and different businesses trying to come up with a similar model. How did you determine your curriculum, and how you will determine the transfer of knowledge in some of the very important areas such as infection control, sterilization, compliance, and those sort of things? What is the plan for that?
Thanks for the question. Yeah, the curriculum has been developed and adapted from the Elsevier dental assisting curriculum, and we have an RDA on our staff who has gone through and, to be clear here, we're looking for a very basic level of knowledge to help orient these employees into the practice. So, probably not a great way to characterize it, but really stripping it down to what do they need to know to be minimally functional within the practice and support the dentist in that role. In order, I think you asked about how would this be taught. We are working with, particularly in San Diego, where we have had a lot of good conversations with the Workforce Development Board there. They have a couple of instructors who I think sound fairly similarly credentialed to yourself, who are evaluating the scope of what we are proposing to cover in these 4 weeks to see how closely, if it would meet their needs or meet what they would feel to be a necessary level to cover in that time. And we would seek to partner with some of those individuals who are identified by the Workforce Development Boards as being able to help us teach this content.
So one of my questions, though, was not, I want to know what sort of guarantee or testing or something that you would give to these employees so that we know, or that the dentist knows and the patients know, that they've actually learned the areas that you're trying to teach them to the point where they're proficient in it, similar to how even regular DAs have to take certain CE courses and pass them, such as infection control. How would you do that, and who would be administering those?
Yeah, so the Elsevier content module within it does have the testing capacity to cover these, to cover the various skills that are being taught. So we would look to test the participants in the program through that built-in mechanism.
It seems CDA would probably need to have some sort of certification for these people. Just my comment and my thoughts, so that if a dental assistant is coming off a different place and is taking these courses, there should be some sort of proof that they've actually learned and have passed these hurdles, benchmarks that they need. But that's just my comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle, for your comment. Moving on to the next question or comment, Rosalinda, I believe you had your hand raised next. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Just a few comments and then a few questions. I first want to thank you guys at the California Dental Association for putting this program together. It's long overdue and definitely needed. As a practicing RDA here in Southern California and a practicing RDA for Pacific Dental Services, definitely support it as a Pacific Dental Services dental assistant and supporting multiple offices throughout California. As I can see this model referred to as a dental assistant in training. With that, I do have a few questions about the timeline. From the letter that's in our meeting notes and agenda, it says that the first cohorts will be starting this March. Is that still an accurate timeline, that we'll be starting in San Diego and the South Bay with a cohort of 30?
Thanks for the question. Yeah, as I referenced previously, things are in a constant state of flux. I'm not sure we're going to be able to field a cohort in March as we intended. we are certainly trying to put that together as soon as we can. And I don't believe that the first cohort would be as large as we initially planned. And that's mostly due to the pandemic. We recognize that part of this training is going to need to be done in person. And we're not particularly wary about that because, of course, as everybody knows, there's no option to work from home as a dental assistant. So at some point, if a participant is wary about those conditions, then this probably isn't a great program for them. So the first cohort will probably be sort of 12 to 15 individuals. And as I said, probably not March, but hopefully as soon as April. San Diego, we probably have the most promise there based on the conversations we're having with the Workforce Development Board, but we're also looking concurrently at San Francisco and what we might be able to do there given the absolute tremendous need in that market.
Okay, wonderful. And then my next question, when this was presented from our stakeholders at Q4's board meeting, really sparked my interest. I immediately jumped online and wanted to go through the process and see what the experience was, if I was to apply or to show interest. And I went online, I just want to give this feedback, and applied, and I had not received feedback at all since then. So I want to make that comment as anyone that's in the community, because I know that there's many different industries that are now looking to pursue a career now in oral health care, that there was no communication with me. And even when I DM'd your guys' Instagram, there was no communication in what next steps would be for me to pursue this. So is there any feedback on your guys' recruiting process other than the Workforce Development Board, or who is managing those communication platforms to ensure that if there is interest in the community, that those people are being reached out to?
So that's interesting. I appreciate that feedback. I'm especially interested because we did, initially as we started down this road, we were hoping to have a cohort in the field even sooner than March. And so we did generate some interest based off of, I think you're talking about probably the various social media campaigns and the webpage. So it sounds like you probably visited the webpage and filled out the interest form. In December, we did go through all those. And by the way, the social media campaign has sort of been paused for the moment. So we aren't gathering additional interest until we have more information to provide to participants. But individuals such as yourself who submitted an interest, we did go through all those individuals and we put them into sort of three buckets. And those were individuals who were responding from markets where we expected to be able to do something, such as San Diego and San Francisco, individuals who were in other markets that would probably fit in a future scope of a pilot program. So these were other transportation type hubs, again, when we were looking at the federal funds. And then we did, of course, have some individuals who responded from areas of the state where it just wouldn't be feasible to put a program like this. These were, more distant locations. So I would like to look into it. Can you tell me your name again? I'm sorry, I missed it on the first part.
Yeah, no, not so. Rosalinda Olagi.
Yeah. Okay.
Olague. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, I'm mostly interested to see, as you say, if you fell between those cracks, how did that happen? And then I flat out don't have an answer for you on why you didn't get an Instagram DM, other than it's potentially we were handling the social media through a third party vendor, and I'm wondering if we had paused the campaign by that point. But anyway, I would like to look into that, and I appreciate the feedback.
Wonderful. And then just a last question. Have you guys partnered? I know, we have lots of different models of dental offices out there in California. Private practice plus, DSO model. Have you guys looked to partner with a DSO to see if that can add any value or help support the program getting launched?
We haven't looked at that yet. I think certainly it's a good idea. Given the scope, I think you mentioned you work for PDS, and I know that PDS has a capacious training facility there in the Irvine area. I think there's certainly future promise to try and mint a program like this across other channels as well. But again, we're eager to just pilot something and figure out what can and can't work about it. We're particularly interested to see sort of what is the throughput rate. We recognize that we won't get necessarily all the cohort participants to succeed with the program. And so I think once we understand a little bit more about that, that's a great opportunity to then look at these other private money partnerships. And I think that there is a tremendous amount of private money in the DSO sector. So that would be a good place to go.
Wonderful, thank you. Well, as a Pacific Dental Services dental assistant, I definitely do champion all the dental assistants that we will bring in through this process, and look forward to supporting you guys as we go through the next steps, because I know it's going to take all of us together.
Great, thank you.
This is Chair Casares. Moving on to the next question or comment. Councilmember Caro, I believe you had your hand raised next.
Thank you. I thank you for your presentation, and I wanted to ask if there are educators. Do you have any educators that are part of your core group? And the second item I wanted to mention was, will there be like a background check for the candidates for already like felony convictions and things like that? Is that something that's been considered?
Yeah, definitely. We're aware of the goal here is to introduce people to dentistry and then hope that they do progress through the training and education to eventually become dental assistants, become RDAs, and so on and so forth, and have the opportunities there. And we are certainly aware of the restrictions on licensure, and we would want to make sure that we weren't, luring somebody into this and then finding out, after they've invested 6 months of their life into it, saying, oh gosh, well, you're never actually going to be able to hold this license. So thanks and have a great day. So short answer is yes.
And are there educators in your core group, or if not, are there plans to include it for the sort of like the educational piece and the sort of maybe even the facility?
Yeah, thank you. Sorry, I took the second question first. So we don't have any educators involved in the core group at this point. As we develop the pilots and begin to partner with some of these workforce development boards and hopefully trainers that they have relationships with, I could see us bringing some in at that point.
This is Chair Casares. Kara, I believe you have another question or comment. Go ahead.
I just wanted to make the comment that if possibly to consider like connecting with educators, because I think the description of the classes that you're just mentioning, I mean, at my college or other colleges, I know that they have introductory classes that have almost the same that you're discussing. So if you could reach out to the California Dental Assisting Teachers Association or other sorts of educational associations that might actually make your process go, it could accelerate your process.
Great, thank you for that.
Thank you for your comment, Kara. Are there any other comments or questions from the council members? Please use the raise hand feature. Are there any public comments? Moderator, please facilitate lines for public comments. Thank you.
This is the moderator. We have opened the Q&A panel. If you'd like to make a public comment, please click on the Q&A icon on your screen. Type, I would like to make a comment into the ask field and then submit that. We will pause for a brief moment. Our first comment comes from Melody Randolph. Melody, your line is open. You will have 2 minutes.
Hi there. Yeah, I would like to also kind of support the concept and what Kara had mentioned about educators. Being an educator myself, I obviously have my own personal slant on this. and we absolutely support helping getting more dental assistants in the field. So in no way am I making a statement that I'm not in support of this program or movement, but it seems very peculiar to me that you're moving forward with a program that has didactic and educational components to it with no educators involved in the planning and processes and creation of this. Seems peculiar to me. I think if you were to tap into asking about current dental assisting educators for help with this, we would be supportive and helpful in the process. So more communication with educators, I think, would help everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next comment comes from Dr. Bruce Witcher. Dr. Witcher, your line is open and you will have 2 minutes.
Thank you. This is an interesting proposal, and I know our area is subject to the shortage of dental assistants, just like most areas. I think that one goal you might have would be to prepare these people to pass the required courses that already exist for dental assistants that enter, such as California law, infection control, and California Dental Practice Act, as well as CPR. It's good that there is an element in here that would give them some basics in dental assisting, because none of those required courses really include that. The other aspect of this that you might be aware of is we do have non-board approved programs that are accredited under Department of Education and Bureau of Private and Post-Secondary Education that are similar. There aren't really that many pure DA programs that I'm aware of, except for perhaps those. And most of them rely on the externships and a heavy workplace experience component to really get them up, of course, to where they're eligible for the RDA, which you say is something that they would be looking at further down the road. So I think it's a good thing, but just how this fits in the spectrum, it is a little bit new. And so it's going to take a little bit of getting used to for everybody, I think. Thank you. That's my comment.
And this is the moderator. We have no additional requests for comment. Would you like me to close the Q&A panel?
Yes, moderator, thank you.
It is closed.
This is Chair Casares. Thank you, Anders Borg, Mr. Anders Borg. We will now move on to agenda item 9, discussion and possible action on potential amendments to Business and Professional Code, Section 1750, infection control course requirements for unlicensed dental assistants.
Excuse me, Chair. This is Karen Fisher jumping in again. I suggest it's 11:45 right now, and I suggest we take a 15-minute break and resume on agenda item 9 at 11 o'clock.
Thank you, Karen Fisher. That would be great.
Moderator, we're going to take a 15-minute break and resume again at 11 o'clock.
Thank you.
This is Executive Officer Fisher. It's 11 o'clock, and I think you can call the meeting back to order and go ahead and move on to agenda item 9.
Thank you, Ms. Karen Fisher. Welcome back from break, everybody. This is Chair Casares. We will be moving to agenda item 9, discussion and possible action on potential amendments to Business and Professional Code Section 1750, infection control course requirements for unlicensed dental assistant. Amelia will be presenting this agenda item.
Thank you, Ms. Cazares. Claudia Pohl, an RDA on behalf of CDAA, KDAT, and the DAGGRS organizations, brought forth a public comment at the July 2020 board meeting regarding concerns with Business and Profession Code 1750 as it relates to the infection control requirements for unlicensed dental assistants. And we have projected 1750 on the screen. Currently, Business and Profession Code 1750C specifies the employer of a dental assistant is responsible for ensuring that the dental assistant who has been in continuous employment for 120 days or more has already successfully completed or successfully completes a 2-hour course in the Dental Practice Act, an 8-hour course in infection control, and a course in basic life support. Board staff request that the Dental Assisting Council discuss and consider making a recommendation to the board on whether the standards currently found in Business and Professions Code 1750 as it relates to the infection control education requirements should be changed and if additional actions are warranted. Thank you.
Thank you, Amelia. Do we have any questions or comments from our dental council members? Kara, I believe you have a question or comment?
Thank you. I just wanted to speak up in support of having the infection control course being taken by an unlicensed dental assistant prior to exposure to blood or other potentially infectious material. The way that the regulations read now, it can be taken up to a year of employment. And looking at the OPES, the occupational analysis data, it looks like there's 50% of the dental offices hire dental assistants and train their dental assistants, and 20% of offices don't have an RDA in their office. So I think this infection control class is a really valuable course to have, especially with the pandemic and everything that's going on with the concern about aerosols and the infectivity of COVID. I do think that there could be some pushback from the dental board or possibly, or even the members of this council, because of there might be a concern about access to these courses. I did some sort of anecdotal research and looked in my area that there are, between here and Sacramento, there are at least 9 providers that teach this course between 1 to 3 times a month. And 2 of them didn't have any information of when their courses were offered. So, but between the 7 providers that actually advertise their courses, there were like 17 days out of a month that these courses were being taught. So the access to having these courses, it seems like they're available and it's not going to be a barrier. And I just wanted to make that as a comment that's that everyone can hear as well. Also, I just wanted to mention that if the dental board adopts this, it would be in alignment with the new regulations that's being required of RDA approved programs. And if people recall the meetings that we've had about that, the DAC recommended that for RDA programs that the infection control course and the examination must be given before any exposure to blood or other potentially infectious materials in their program. So if this isn't approved, then there's a double standard. And I think it can also open the board up to liability if there's a concern something happens with the untrained dental exam and there's like a lawsuit. And I think legal can actually, we could ask legal to maybe chime in on this if it's something that they can do. But if there's a double standard where you require RDA educational programs to teach this infection control class, and then unlicensed dental assistants without a license aren't required to take it up to a year, only up to a year of their employment, that if there's a lawsuit, that seems like that's going to be like a glaring issue for the dental board too as well. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments, Kara. Jerry, I believe you had your hand raised next.
Yes, thank you. I also wanted to comment that I believe that the wording should be employment is contingent upon completion of the Infection Control California Practice Act course, the 8-hour. So not that they need to be able to take it within a year. It should be, they should have that completed before employment, before working with patients.
Thank you, Jerry. Do we have any more questions or comments from our dental council members? Go ahead, Kara.
So I just want to ask, is this something that we can make a motion as a recommendation for the dental board member to bring forward to the dental board for tomorrow's meeting? Is it possible to do a motion, and do we do the motion now, or do we do the motion after public comments?
Hi, this is Sarah Wallace, Assistant Executive Officer. Member Miyazaki, at this point, staff would, if the council wanted to move forward with the recommendation, we would ask for specifics to be included in the recommendation in terms of timelines or specific requirements. Just to clarify, any changes to this would not be a regulatory change, it would be a legislative change, which would require the board carrying legislation to make any changes, which most likely wouldn't be taken up until the end of this year, when legislative proposals are submitted for inclusion in the next session. At this point, if the council made a recommendation today, it would be reported on at tomorrow's meeting, but the board wouldn't be able to take action until it's an actually agendized item at a future meeting.
Thank you for those comments, Sarah. I believe Michelle had her hand raised next.
Yes, good morning, Michelle Jawad. I would like to know, as you just said, if we were to recommend this, I'm sure it needs to be a more specific document with the correct verbiage for us to all vote on. I would like to see some sort of document as to exactly what it is that we're asking for, what changes and how it would play out. I agree that definitely with the pandemic and everything else, we should have the dental assistants, especially with some of the new things we're hearing. This should be a number one priority, but I'd like to see specifically, I mean, it's good to say that they need to do it before education or before hiring, but how would we know that it was actually done? Who would be responsible for checking on that? Is it some sort of certificate they would bring with them that they took this course and passed it, or whatever the logistics are, plus the words, which I'm pretty sure need to be very specific. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment, Michelle. Kara, I believe you had your hand raised next.
Is it possible to request this to be agendized at the next meeting with the, and I'm sorry, staff, because I know this is more work for you, but with the staff working on the language and that being presented at the next meeting?
The staff can come back to the next meeting, place this on the agenda to have additional information, although at this point, staff are requesting the council discuss the item and give more information or direction as to the language. I've heard a couple of my concerns regarding the language, and I believe a comment was made by Ms. Fowler that perhaps the requirement should be that employment is contingent upon completion of the 8-hour infection control course. At this point, we would ask the council to vet out what requirements you would like to see, and then staff can present this back as a future agenda item at another DAC meeting. Just as a point of clarification, this particular code section is relevant to unlicensed dental assistants. So the board does not track any of this information or the completion of the courses for the unlicensed dental assistants. This is a requirement of the employing dentist. And so if we were to receive complaints, then of course we would investigate and ask the employer dentist for certification of these requirements. So that, just pointing that out for clarification as it relates to this requirement for unlicensed dental assistants versus what we see for our actual licensed category requirements for registered dental assistants.
Thank you for those comments, Sarah Wallace. I believe Rosalinda had her hand raised next. Go ahead, Rosalinda.
Thank you, Chair. And Sarah, thank you for those additional comments. I want to echo and just what Sarah said as a reminder, these are unlicensed dental assistants. A dental assistant that enters the practice possibly with no education or background for on-the-job training. And within that year, they are to complete the infection control. But yes, we are in a pandemic and we have been going through quite numerous updates on infection control process. So I do see in the near future us having to look at the language and seeing what we can do to support. Is it maybe the first 90 days? If you look at onboarding process of dental assistants in various dental practices, is it now look at 90-day onboarding, 6 months versus a year? In addition to that, next steps for staff, I would like to ask, and I thank Council Member Karen Masaki for providing data in the Northern California area, but I would really like to see where are these courses offered as a whole across California, both online and in person. As we move forward to as well, we know virtual education is going to forever be a part of the platform with COVID. So I would really like to see that data and us consider that in our decision making or to take into account, because access to these courses is going to be something we should consider as we draw up the language for this. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments, Rosalinda. Michelle, I believe you had your hand raised next. Go ahead.
No, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Michelle. Kara, I believe you had your hand raised next.
I just wanted to mention, I understand the concern about taking the language and taking the class, but we already have the language for the RDA programs and the requirement that the students have to take the infection control and have to take the written exam before they actually start working on each other or on patients or exposure to blood. So the language, I believe, is already there. And again, if we require it to be taught like within a certain period, it again is a double standard. And I don't think it's a good idea to have the educational programs do it in such a strict manner, and then for the dental assistants that don't have a license to complete it within, I think a reasonable amount of time is okay, but I just don't think that 1 year for sure is not okay. And maybe we could think about within a month or within for me, I think that would be sort of okay. But I think, again, I just want to stress that there's a double standard, and I wonder if the lawyer or the legal counsel could actually address this too as well. Maybe that could be investigated, because again, it opens a board for liability when you have two different standards for, I know that they're two different, they're unlicensed dental assistants and then licensed dental assistants, but it seems to me if I was in a court and someone was doing a lawsuit, that the juror would think that it should actually be maybe the opposite. I just don't see that as weighing in the favor of the dental board if there's some sort of lawsuit that happens because of the language.
Thank you for your comment, Kara. Are there any other questions or comments from our members? Kara, did you have another question or comment?
Yes, so I just want to be clear because I think I'm unclear about the process. So So my understanding is that this could be agendized for the next meeting, and and the staff is looking for direction about the language, and I was looking at the language that we've had in the handout that's given with the meeting, and if we use a language that's in the unlicensed dental assistant, it would be something like a dental assistant without a license is required to complete a board-approved 8-hour course in infection control prior to exposure to blood or other potentially infectious material. And that was the language that I was thinking about. And also, I guess my question is do we need to agree on making a recommendation for the for all these things that we've been discussing?
This is Sarah Wallace. Staff would request that the council come to a consensus on what specific requirements you would like us to put together as a proposal for a future agenda item. So I believe I have Kara's comment, or I'm sorry, Ms. Miyasaki's comment about following the similar format to our current regulations for registered dental assistants. I also have Ms. Fowler's comment. And then I also have Ms. Olagi's request for additional information regarding geographic regions of where the course is being offered. At this point, what additional information would the council like, and which direction in terms of a requirement would you like board staff to explore in developing an agenda item for a future meeting?
Tracy, I believe you had your hand up next. Go ahead.
Yes, I think I'm in agreement with Kara here 100% that we need to simplify this in the fact that if you are a non-registered person going into the dental field for your protection and the protection of everybody in there, this should be accomplished within 30 days of your employment with a dentist for your own protection plus the protection of patients, because anywhere in the dental office, you're going to be working with bloodborne pathogen, whether you're picking up an instrument or in the room. So just to simplify this, can we just go straight with within 30 days of employment? This needs to occur.
Thank you for those comments, Tracy. Kara, did you have another comment?
I did. Could we ask that legal look into the language and see if that becomes a liability if the RDA students are required to take it? And there's like there could be, if we required it within like 30 days, let's say could that be a liability issue? Thank you.
Thank you, Kara. I believe Jerry had her hand up next.
Yes, I agree with Kara that 30 days, that would have to be 30 days not working with patients. And so there can't be a window of time there that they haven't completed this and be able to work on patients. So I don't know if you want to we can move with suggested wording. We can agree on wording, or like Kara said, do you want to bring this up, put it on the agenda for a future board meeting so we could discuss wording more, or we could do that now?
Thank you, Jerry. Rosalinda, I don't know if you have your hand up, or can you please clarify?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes, thank you, Chair. I do have my hand up. So I would really recommend, council members, that we bring this back. This is our first time seeing this. It was asked of the stakeholders for us to bring to the DAC to review and discussion. I think there's great dialogue that has taken place between all of us today. I do believe that there is ask of the staff and for us to give the staff that time to bring back that information, bring back additional language, and then we move forward as seeing if this is something we'll propose to the board or move to the board. But at this time, I definitely do think additional conversation or dialogue is needed in our Q2 DAC council meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Rosalinda, for your comment. Tara, I believe you're next.
I agree with Rosalinda. So we can, we should really look at this and also look at the information that the staff brings forward. And again, I'm sorry for this, for doing more work for the staff.
Tara, I believe you're next.
This is Tara Welch, the board's legal counsel. I did want to address the comments made by Ms. Miyazaki with respect to potential lawsuits. I just need to note for the council that there is already a difference in the training requirement. Unregistered under 1750 subdivision C2 allows an unregistered dental assistant to complete this infection control training within 1 year of employment, whereas 3 other code sections, 1750.2, 1750.4, 1752.1, that's the one for RDAs. Those 3 require the infection control training to be completed before permitting or registration. So this difference in training requirements exists today. So to the extent someone, I guess a dentist, has been sued, that's not really under the board's jurisdiction. With respect to the board being sued, these are legislative mandates, so the board is not sued for complying with statutes. So I'm not seeing any litigation concern with changing these requirements. Thank you.
Thank you, Tara. Kara Miyazaki, did you have a question or comment?
I did. I just wanted, thank you, Tara, for your clarification. Really appreciate that. And I just, maybe the staff can explain this maybe better than I can, but the new regulations that are going to come out, the ones that are currently moving forward, those are not in the Dental Practice Act that we have. And those regulations say that the infection control class should, and the written exam should be taken before any exposure to blood or OPIM or something, or I think the language might say before any preclinical or clinical requirements. So could the staff clarify the new regulations that are moving forward that are not?
Yes, this is Sarah Wallace. So that is the requirement in the new proposal for the comprehensive overhaul of the dental assisting educational program and course requirements. That is merely a proposal at this point. It was initiated by the board at the December meeting, and it is going through the rulemaking process, which still requires the acceptance of public comment and input. And so it is not in its current form something that will be a final product. I would expect, based on comments that we will receive, that most likely there could be changes to the language. I don't know what those changes would be, but again, those are regulations that we've promulgated to clarify the existing requirements that are in statute to help us interpret what the requirements are for registered dental assistants to become licensed and what those course requirements are. And then, of course, it will make changes to the standalone courses for infection control, the 8-hour infection control course. At this point, that isn't a requirement. It's the hope that that will be the requirement when the regulations go into effect, but it's difficult to build an argument to make changes to statute relating to dental assistants based off what we hope will be the outcome for the requirement for the course for registered dental assistants. So I hope that clarifies at this point. It is not current law. It is not currently a requirement because it is merely a proposal at this point that has to go through the formal rulemaking process.
Thank you, Sarah, for your input. Do we have any other questions or comments from the dental assistant council members? This is Chair Casares, and I wanted to remind all the members the action requested. We are discussing and considering making a recommendation to the board on whether the standards currently found in Business Penal Code 1750 as it relates to the infection control education requirements should be changed and if additional actions are warranted.
Chair Casares, this is Karen Fisher, Executive Officer. I believe I heard the discussion going in the direction that staff is to bring this issue back to another dental assistant council member meeting prior to moving it forward to the board. And so if everybody is in agreement that that's what's going to be happening, I think it's probably time for you to go ahead and ask the moderator to open up the queue for public comment.
Thank you, Karen Fisher. Moderator, could we open up the queue for public comments? Thank you.
This is the moderator. We have opened the Q&A panel. If you'd like to make a comment, please click on the Q&A icon on your screen. Type, I would like to make a comment into the text field and submit that. We will pause for just a moment to allow submission of requests. Our first comment comes from Dr. Bruce Witcher. Dr. Witcher, your line is open. You will have 2 minutes.
Good morning, and thank you. I've been around long enough to have heard this sort of discussion before, and I would just like to remind everybody what our executive officer and assistant executive officer have pointed out, that the dentist is the one who is actually responsible. And if there is a breach of infection control and any kind of litigation ensues, the dentist is responsible for what goes on in their office. So they are the ones with oversight responsibility, and they need to understand the level of training and expertise of anybody in their employ. So that, and as Assistant Executive Officer Wallace pointed out, we currently have no way of tracking who has taken these courses and who has not. And an important consideration is that the legislature has gone on record and passed as not really being very interested in setting up yet another licensed category. We already have our DAs for that. The DA specifically exists to be an entry-level pathway. So if we start setting up too many barriers to licensure, that is not going to fly over in the legislature without a lot of objection. I fully appreciate everybody's concerns about infection control in the era of COVID, and there's, it's sort of hard to oppose anything that improves patient safety. I get that. But I think there needs to be a little bit of a balance here. We don't want to rush into setting up requirements that may create a barrier to the workplace. We've already heard a lot of testimony about how the shortage of dental assistants is really a big issue. So you can just maybe take that under consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Witcher. Our next comment comes from Melody Randolph.
Couple comments. First, based just to comment on what Dr. Witcher said. Yes, definitely, the dentist is responsible for everything that happens in his or her office. However, they are certainly not around 24/7 as they watch and they delegate infection control procedures to their assistants. In fact, I beg to argue that many dentists rely so heavily on their assistants to do the infection control procedures that they're often not even aware of the procedures that are happening in the office. And very often, assistants are training other assistants who are training other assistants who are training other assistants. And with the shortage of dental assistants right now and the influx of people coming into the profession that are not formally trained, it's even more critical, adding COVID, and on top of that, it's even more critical now to train these dental assistants and have them do this 8-hour infection control course before they have the opportunity to infect patients. It's only an 8-hour course. We're not asking for the moon. It's not like they have to take a 6-month course. It's a 1-day course. And there are many, many courses available around. The availability is there. And the dental board's mandate, number one, I know I'm preaching to the choir, is
30 seconds.
Patient safety. And the dental board needs to do what they need to do in order to protect patients and their safety. And that needs to be number one. So I strongly recommend that we consider this change. Thank you.
And our next comment comes from Claudia Pohl. Claudia, your line is open. You will have 2 minutes.
Thank you. And thank you to the members of the DAC for discussing this. Claudia Pohl with CDAA. So as we've talked, 1750 does allow up to 12 months for the on-the-job trained dental assistant to complete that 8-hour infection control course. What we need to remember is during that 12 months, that dental assistant will be doing disinfection, instrument cleaning, packaging, sterilization, handling hazardous waste, waterline maintenance, as well as direct patient care. Allowing 12 months to take that required infection control course does not align with Cal OSHA bloodborne pathogen standards, which requires that employees receive training, and I quote, at the time of the initial assignment to tasks where occupational exposure may take place. So the dental board required infection control course is 8 hours, 1 day. We believe that requiring this of anyone prior to their being exposed to blood, saliva, or OPIM is the best way to protect everyone involved in the delivery of dental care, and especially the patient. And it outweighs any perception that it is a barrier to entering the profession. So rhetorically, my question to you would be, what do you think the public would want? And what do you think the public would expect of us? Thank you.
Seeing no additional requests for comment, would you like me to close the Q&A panel?
Yes, thank you, moderator.
It has been closed.
This is Sarah Wallace, Assistant Executive Officer. Chair Cazares, it appears that the council would like staff to bring back additional information at a future meeting. Based on the comments that we've heard today, staff will work to prepare an additional memo to present as a separate agenda item to the council in the future to address the comments received by each of the members and the request for additional information relating to the course. Therefore, I don't believe any additional action is necessary on behalf of the council at this point.
Thank you, Sarah Wallace. I appreciate you clarifying that for for the DACA members. This is Chair Casares. We will now move on to agenda item number 12, update regarding RDA EF examination. Amelia, I believe you will be presenting this agenda item.
Yes, thank you. This memorandum, beginning on page 51 of the meeting materials, provides the background regarding the RDA EF examination. The RDA EF clinical and practical examinations are specified in statute at Business and Professions Code, section 1753.4. In August 2020, the board received notice that the request for a waiver to temporarily suspend the requirement for RDA EF applicants to successfully pass the clinical and practical examination for licensure was denied. The Department of Consumer Affairs has not waived any clinical or practical examinations for any other licensing board. Since then, staff board have continued to reach out to dental schools in both Northern and Southern California to find a host school for this examination. In early January 2021, as directed by the board in December, staff submitted a legislative proposal to the Senate Business, Profession, and Economic Development Committee to repeal the clinical and practical examination requirements for RDA EF licensure. The Senate BP and ED committee consultants are assisting board staff with identifying appropriate legislative vehicles for this proposal. And I'd be happy to take any questions on this agenda item at this time.
Thank you, Amelia, for that presentation. Do we have any questions or comments from our DACA members?
I apologize, Chair Casares. This is Sarah Wallace, Assistant Executive Officer. I did want to share an update that the legislative calendar required bills to be introduced by last Friday, February 19th, which was after the date that the board meeting agendas were posted and agenda materials were created. We do have an update in that Senator Roth has introduced a bill, Senate Bill 607, to enact the proposal that the board requested at the December meeting to eliminate the practical and clinical exam.
Thank you for that information, Sarah. This is Chair Casares. We will be moving on to the next agenda item, number 13, I believe, on future agenda items. Excuse me. Are there any council member comments for future agenda items? Please use the raise hand feature.
I'm sorry. This is Karen Fisher again. I don't believe we took public comment on agenda item 12. So we need to go back and ask the moderator to open up the queue.
Okay, moderator, would you please open up the queues for public comments? Thank you.
This is the moderator. We have opened the Q&A panel. If you'd like to make a public comment, please click on the Q&A icon on your screen. Type "I would like to make a comment" into the text field and submit that comment. Seeing no requests for comment, would you like me to close the panel?
Yes, thank you, moderator.
It is closed.
Chair Casares, it looks like you probably didn't take council member comments either. So, and you've got a couple of hands up.
For agenda item number 12, updating RDA EF examination, we're accepting comments from our council members. Jerry Fowler, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. So I heard you say that you said Bill 607 looks like that's great news. I'm very excited. So will there be, or is there a projected idea of time about when we might expect some kind of a result from that? In other words, will it be in this year, the middle of the year? Can I get feedback on that? That's my first question. And then also regarding that, you have been reaching out to schools for possible sites for the RDAEF exam. Have you got any yeses? Do you have any possible schools that are willing to host that exam for 2021? And then my third question would be regarding students that are actually in programs now. I know the 2021 program is not posted on the website yet, but should they continue like it is supposedly there? Should they submit their applications to take an exam possibly that might be offered in June? So if you could answer those questions, I'd really appreciate it. Thank you.
This is Sarah Wallace, Assistant Executive Officer. Karen, are you okay if I take this?
Absolutely.
So, Ms. Fowler, in terms of the timeline for legislation, typically when bills are introduced and signed and go through the process and signed by the governor, the assumption is that it is going to become effective on January 1st the following year. That is when a bill is not deemed an urgency measure. If a bill is deemed an urgency measure, it would become effective upon signing by the governor. At this point, SB 607 is not an urgency measure, although Karen and I have both been in contact with staff of the Senate Business and Professions Committee, and we've asked if it's possible to have it as an urgency measure, and we're still having discussions relating to that. So I will be sure to share additional information as this moves along. As of this point, if this bill were to go through the process and become signed by the governor in its current format, it would not become effective until January 1st of 2022. In relation to updates from the schools, we have been in contact with the dental schools. There have been a couple of smaller programs that have offered the opportunity to administer the examination. However, they would not be able to accommodate the quantity of candidates that we have, and we still have factors involving COVID-19 protocols that we are vetting through the process, and availability of examiners and what that would mean, and the requirements that we would have to implement to safely administer the practical and clinical examination. And until we have a plan with multiple locations where we can most definitely move forward with the exam, at this point we don't have anything scheduled for 2021. We've been told that from a couple of schools that they don't foresee us having any availability at the first half of 2021. I'm hopeful that with the news these days that the numbers are going down and things seem to be looking better, that perhaps that will change. But unfortunately, I don't have a definitive answer for you at this point, but we'll continue to update the Dental Assistant Council at future meetings as this progresses. And then in relation to your last question relating to students in progress currently, at this point, I would not advise students to not enroll and continue with their education and with the requirements. We are working with OPES. A secondary component to the board's proposal was not only eliminating the practical and clinical examination and statute, but also updating the RDAEF written examination to ensure that those competencies are tested. And in conversations with OPES, they're evaluating this, but at this point, it's not known whether or not the RDAEF written examination will have to be completely rewritten. So it could be that the students that are currently enrolled, when they graduate and they apply to the board, they will have the opportunity to take that RDAEF written examination. They would not be taking the RDAEF practical and clinical examinations this year. However, if that requirement were to be eliminated, then they would have already met all of the other requirements, and it would be my hope that we could just launch initial licensing from that point forward. So I would encourage students to continue enrollment into the programs and continue applying to the board for their licensure so that we can address any deficiencies up front, and that hopefully the only requirement outstanding would be the practical and clinical exam until hopefully that requirement is repealed. I hope that clarifies. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Yes, that was very good. My heart just really goes out to the students that have, they passed their, or they completed their programs, I guess you could say, last year, and they still have not been able to practice. And I know we're doing the best we can. I realize that, but I just wish there was something we could do quicker for them. But thank you.
Thank you for your comments, board members. Do we have any other questions or comments from the board? Tracy, go ahead.
Councilmember Rita Espinoza, did you have a comment?
Yes, could you give that bill number that's going to legislation again, please?
Yes, it's Senate Bill 607, authored by Senator Roth.
This is Karen Fisher. Staff will send the DAC members the link to this legislation after the meeting. Chair Casares, I think you're ready to go on to agenda item 13, your final agenda item.
Thank you, Ms. Fisher. This is Chair Casares. We are moving on to agenda item 13 for future agenda items. Do we have any questions or comments from our council members? Please raise your hand. Rosalinda, I believe you were first.
Thank you, Chair. If appropriate, through the Chair, I would just like to make a few comments in celebration of Dental Assistant Recognition Week and celebrating our profession here in California, but across the country, if that is appropriate, just to give a few words to our colleagues. So in the midst of a global crisis, dental assistants have continuously performed beyond what is required. Understanding during these uniquely challenging times, quality performance at every job, every day, every hour is required. Known for our resilience, stamina, and versatility, our combination of people skills, quality clinical skills, and emotional resilience has been amplified to rise to new standards in supporting clinicians and providing access to oral health care. Through compassion, integrity, and grit, we have united in more ways than ever thought possible. True dental heroes through and through. Together, we have defied the odds and redefined the power of trust and leadership for our profession. From across the country, I thank each of you for your work this last year. I look forward to celebrating our profession with each and every one of you March 7th through the 13th. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Rosalinda. I look forward to your dental assistant presentation every year. Do we have any other questions or comments for future agenda items from any of our council members? Tracy Reed Espinosa, did you have a question or comment?
I had a question about if we could put on the next agenda talking about the RDA EF2s adding secondary certification to administer local anesthetic.
This is Karen Fisher, so noted.
Thank you, council members. This concludes the February 25th, 2021 Dental Assisting Council meeting. This meeting is adjourned.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Michelle Jawad. Bye.
Thank you, Tracy Reed Espinosa.
Thank you, Kara Miyazaki.
Thank you, Jerry Fowler.